Welcome to my new channel. I'm Jack, and this is CS with me. I'm a curious computer scientist, and I assume you are too if you're here. My goal for this channel is to learn, code, and if all goes well, build an awesome community of computer scientists. If any of that sounds good to you, subscribe, maybe follow me on Instagram, and then let's get started. For our very first topic, we'll be covering C. More specifically, guided by the book, The C Programming Language by Brian Kernighan and Dennis Ritchie, a classic. So without further ado, let's get started.
Typically, how we'll structure these videos is a whiteboard segment where we'll cover some of the basic topics, and then a hands-on coding segment where we'll do some more work in the editor. So, for the whiteboard segment, we'll be going over the very basics of C today. First, we'll discuss the bare minimum of a function. In C, every program starts with a function called main. Think of it as the program's entry point. Here's a simple program structure. Int main parentheses, brace, return 0, semicolon, brace. Now, this int is the return type of the function, and this is the actual return. Now that we have that down, let's add something else. We'll bring this down here, and right above here, we'll say include stdio dot h. This stands for standard input output library. What this allows us to do is include some input-output functions in our main function. We will move our return statement down, and then we can write something like print f hello world. When we run this, we will get the string hello world in the terminal, and the function will exit properly with the return 0 statement at the end. Now that we have the very basics of a function, let's learn about variables. Variables are extremely useful when creating large programs or doing arithmetic, as it allows us to create names in place of numbers and overall get a better feel for what's going on in the program. The general structure of a variable is type, name, and then it can either be ended with a semicolon, or we can assign it using the assignment operator to a certain value and then ended with a semicolon. For example, we can write int num equals 10. Now, whenever we see the term num in our program, we know it equals 10. There are other types. We can write float, which is a decimal point number, and say other num equals 5.5. Now, once again, we've assigned 5.5 to the term other num. We can then take these and carry out operations. For example, we can use multiplication to get the product and assign it to num asterisk other num. We can do many things with variables, which we'll cover going forward. In the coding segment at the end of the video, we'll be creating a Fahrenheit to Celsius function, which allows us to convert between the two metrics. Now, we've gotten a good idea of basic function style, libraries, and variables. So let's head into the editor and do some playing around to see how this stuff works.
All right, so for our coding segment, I'm just going to get into it. I'm going to assume you have everything properly installed if you've programmed before, but if not, it's easy to look up. You just need an IDE. I suggest Visual Studio Code is one of the good ones. And then if you're brand new to programming, you probably want to install the proper tools on your computer. For Mac, I use Homebrew, and then you need to get GCC, which is your compiler. But again, there are many resources online for you to look that up. And once you have that set, let's get started. I have this file, lesson1.c, where we'll be doing our coding. So first of all, we're going to pretty much just emulate what we just talked about. First, we'll do our basic function structure, int main, and then return 0. And I'll show you how to compile. Go down here to your terminal, and you just write GCC -o for output. And then you type whatever you want your output file to be. You could do test, you could do L1, you could do random. For this, we'll do lesson1. And then we write the name of our source code, lesson1.c, and press enter. And then up here, you'll see lesson1, and that is our executable file, which we can run by saying /lesson1. And there we go. We don't see any output because it's just returning 0. It's not doing anything. But we didn't get an error message, which means we're doing something right. So now let's incorporate the standard library. Up here we do pound include, and then stdio.h, and I'll leave a comment so you can remember. This is standard input output library. Yeah, comments are /, or if you want to go multi-line comment, you can do a /*, and that allows you to span your comments out. All right, now we will use this library to print something out. We can write printf. We'll do the classic hello world, and do a semicolon, and then we will recompile. You have to recompile to make sure the changes take hold, and then run it again. And this time we get hello world, and that's your first program output to the terminal in C. So congratulations if you got that. All right, now let's work with some variables. We'll work with them inside the main function. Let's get rid of the print. And we will say int num equals 10 as before, and float other num equals 5.5. And then we will do our product. So there are two things you can do. You can do an integer product, which will be int product equals num times other num. Or we can do float product, float other product equals num other num. And you'll be able to see the difference in these when we go to print these out. Printf, integer product. And then in C, to print out variables, we need identifiers or conversion specifiers. And what this is essentially a %sign followed by a certain identifier. So for integers, this can either be, well, it's typically D for decimal number. And then we just write a comma after our quotations, and then whatever variable we are trying to print. So for this case, we'll say products. And we will just compile that and see what we get. And actually, I'm going to include a \n, which is new line, just to make things a little cleaner. So compile again. And there we go. integer product 55. Now notice there's no decimal. Even though we multiply an integer with a float, because we specify it as an integer, it takes the form of an integer, no decimal. But now let's see what happens when we use the float form of the product. Float product. And this time we will do %f for float. And we'll write comma other products. And we'll do another new line. Do 2 new lines here. Compile and run. And there we go. We see we have 55.000000. That is our float number. And then we have our integer number. So it's all based on our specifiers and how we cast these variables when we create them. All right. Now, for the final part of this video, we will dive into a little short program that we'll write to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. Essentially, what we're going to do is define a new function down here. We're going to make it a float. We'll say C to Celsius to Fahrenheit. And our input will be a float Celsius. Okay. And essentially what we're going to do, the formula for this is Celsius equals Fahrenheit minus 32 times 5/9. But we want Celsius to Fahrenheit. So if we extract everything, we get 9 times C divided by 5 plus 32 equals F. And we will use this in our function. Our input is Celsius, this C right here. So we will say we want float Fahrenheit to equal 9 times Celsius. And here's where our variable names come in handy, because we can use that instead of a random number, divided by 5 plus 32. And now all we have to do is return Fahrenheit. All right. So to see whether or not this worked, let's go up here and we will get rid of this stuff. Let's do a base case where we have Celsius goes 0. Most people know Celsius 0 is Fahrenheit 32, so that'll be easy to check. Let's say float Fahrenheit equal Celsius to Fahrenheit, and then we'll just say 0. And then we will print F. Temperature is F line Fahrenheit. Run degrees for the heck of it. All right, we'll compile this. Oh, all right, so we have a problem. This is good. We want experience in debugging, and I'm certainly not perfect. So what does it say? Call the undeclared function, Celsius to Fahrenheit. Ah, yes, okay. So one thing I forgot to mention, we need prototypes when creating functions. So a function prototype essentially just tells the program, like, this will be happening. So we're going to write float Celsius to Fahrenheit, essentially exactly what we see down here, and then specify the type of input. And that's all. This should fix that. And there we go. And there's our output. Temperature is 32 degrees. Let's try something crazier. Let's try Celsius is, I don't know, 263. What temperature do we have? 505.333999994. Well, there you go. That's a quick and easy way to do calculations that would normally take much longer. It's quick, you change your input, and you get the answer. All right, so what have we learned in this video? We've learned the basic format of a function with the type and then the name, and we know that main is essential to a file in C. We've learned how to include libraries with the include statement. There are many others other than the standard input output library that I'm sure we'll cover throughout this series. We've learned how to use variables to carry out arithmetic operations and use them within functions. And we've also learned about prototypes, which I happen to forget, but I was reminded by the error in the terminal. And that's going to be key, debugging. I am not perfect, so we will be debugging throughout this series because I will make mistakes. So I hope you enjoyed. We're going to be going deeper into this book throughout the series. It's going to be great. We're going to learn a lot about C, and I hope you'll join me for the rest of the journey. Thank you.